Everybody wants the shortcut. People want the one move that changes everything. The trick, the loophole, the perfect stock, the perfect business, the perfect timing. And I get it. Life is expensive. The world moves fast. And when you're stressed about money, slow and steady can sound like a joke. But if you're looking for the real answer, the answer that actually works for normal people, there isn't a secret. There's a principle. And it's so simple that most people ignore it because it doesn't feel powerful at first. That principle is compounding. Not compounding as a vocabulary word, compounding as a force, the force that turns small, consistent actions into massive outcomes if you give it enough time. And once you truly understand compounding, you stop asking, how do I get rich fast? You start asking, how do I build something that grows without me constantly pushing it? Because that's the real goal, not flashy wins. Freedom, the ability to make choices without panic, the ability to sleep at night, the ability to say no, the ability to take care of the people you love. That kind of freedom is built the same way almost every time you start small, you stay consistent, and you don't interrupt the process. That's compounding. Now here's why compounding is so hard for most people. Compounding is a delayed reward system. It's the opposite of how our brains are wired. Your brain wants rewards now. Your brain wants proof now. Your brain wants to feel like today mattered. But compounding doesn't give you that at the beginning. At the beginning, compounding feels pointless. You save a little money and your life looks the same. You invest a little money and your account barely moves. You read a little and you don't suddenly feel smarter. You work out and your body doesn't change overnight. You go to bed early for a week and you still feel tired. So your brain concludes, this isn't working. And that's the moment most people quit. Not because compounding doesn't work, but because it doesn't work loudly in the beginning. Compounding is quiet first, then it's noticeable. Then it's undeniable. And if you've never stayed long enough to reach the noticeable part, it looks like everyone else is getting ahead by luck. But it isn't luck. It's staying power. Let me explain this with an image you can feel. Imagine pushing a heavy wheel. At first, it barely moves. You push and push and push, and it feels like all effort and no progress. That's the first stage of compounding. It's the stage where the process is working, but you can't see it yet. Then, if you keep pushing, the wheel starts moving easier. Your effort starts creating momentum. That's the second stage. And then eventually, the wheel is moving so well that you barely need to push. The momentum carries it. That's the third stage. And most people never reach stage 3 because stage 1 feels like a scam. But stage 1 is the price of entry. That's the deal. Now let's make compounding real with money, because money is the easiest place to measure it. If you invest $10,000 and somehow earn 20% a year for 30 years, your money multiplies by about 237 times. That's because 1.2 multiplied by itself 30 times, roughly 37. So 10,000 becomes around 2.37 million. And when people hear that, they usually focus on the 20%. They say, yeah, but who can get 20%? And that's a fair question. But the deeper lesson isn't the rate, it's the time. Even at lower rates, time changes everything. Time is the multiplier you can't replace. You can always try to earn more money later. You can always cut expenses later. You can always learn more later. But you can't go back and buy the years you wasted. Time is the one asset you cannot refinance. And once you see time as a multiplier, you start thinking differently about your choices. You start noticing that some choices pay you once, and other choices keep paying you over and over. Compounding is the difference between being paid once and being paid repeatedly. Now, here's the part people don't like, but it's important. Compounding doesn't just multiply good choices. It multiplies whatever you repeat, good and bad. Positive compounding and negative compounding are happening in your life right now, whether you're paying attention or not. Your finances are compounding. Your habits are compounding. Your health is compounding. Your relationships are compounding. Your skills are compounding. Your mindset is compounding. So the real question isn't, do I believe in compounding? The real question is, what direction am I compounding in? Because if you do nothing, you're still compounding. You're just compounding by default instead of by design. Let's talk about how compounding shows up in real life. Here's a simple story. Two people, same age, same income. They both make $50,000 a year. Person who spends basically everything. Not because they're irresponsible, but because it's normal. A car payment that feels manageable. A nicer apartment because I work hard. Eating out because I'm busy. A few subscriptions. A little shopping to relieve stress. A weekend trip here and there. Nothing crazy. Just normal life. Person B lives on 80% and saves 20%. They don't live like a monk. They don't hate their life. They just keep their lifestyle slightly below their income and invest consistently. Now, at 30 years old, these two people don't look that different. Person A might actually look like they're doing better. Better car. Better clothes. More nights out. More fun. Person B looks disciplined, maybe even boring. But zoom out. At 40, person B starts feeling something person A doesn't. Breathing room. At 50, person B has options. At 60, person B has choices person A doesn't. And here's what's important. Person B didn't need a miracle. They didn't need to be a genius. They just needed to stop interrupting compounding. Because that's what destroys people financially. It's not always low income. It's not always bad luck. It's the constant interruption. Starting, stopping, restarting, stopping again. Saving for a while, then spending it. Investing for a while, then pulling it out. Trying for a while, then quitting. You can't compound if you keep resetting the clock. And this is why people feel like they work hard but don't get ahead. They're always back at day one. Now let's go beyond money, because compounding is bigger than investing. Compounding is the hidden engine behind almost every kind of success. Let's start with skill compounding. Skill compounding is one of the most unfair advantages in the world, and the best part is it's actually fair. It's available to anyone. If you get slightly better every day at a valuable skill, you eventually become a completely different person. Writing, sales, coding, design, public speaking, negotiation, leadership, cooking, fitness, parenting, communication, emotional control. It doesn't matter what the skill is. The formula is the same. Small improvement repeated. The problem is skill growth doesn't show up like a paycheck. It shows up slowly. You practice and you still feel average. You learn and you still feel behind. You try and you still make mistakes. So you think, maybe I'm not talented. But talent is overrated compared to accumulated practice. Let me put it like this. If you read 10 pages a day, that's about 3, 6, and 50 pages in a year. That's multiple books. Now imagine doing that for 5 years. You're not just someone who reads. You're someone with a different brain. Because knowledge compounds in a special way. It connects. New information attaches to old information. Patterns become obvious. You start predicting outcomes. You start making cleaner decisions. And from the outside, it looks like you're naturally smarter. But you're not. You're just compounded. Now let's talk about health compounding. Health is the most brutal kind of compounding because the interest shows up whether you believe in it or not. One workout doesn't transform you. One healthy meal doesn't transform you. One early night of sleep doesn't transform you. So people assume it doesn't matter. But repeat those choices for years and your life changes. More energy, more confidence, better mood, better focus, less pain, better relationships because you're not irritable and exhausted all the time. Better work because your brain actually works. Health is not just about looking good. Health is leverage. It's the energy to do what you want to do. And the negative side compounds too. 1 week of junk food doesn't ruin you. 1 month of poor sleep doesn't ruin you. But stack enough months and years, and suddenly you're paying a price that feels unfair. And that's the scary part of compounding. It's gradual, then sudden. Gradual, then sudden. That's how savings grow. That's how debt grows. That's how skills grow. That's how health improves. That's how health collapses. Gradual, then sudden. Now relationships. Relationships compound too. And the interest rate is trust. A lot of people approach relationships like a transaction. How can I benefit from this person? What can I get? How can this connection help my career? But that's not how relationship compounding works. Real relationship compounding is built on reliability. Doing what you say you'll do. Showing up when you said you would. Being honest when it's uncomfortable. Giving credit. Being consistent. Not being perfect. Just being dependable. Those choices look small in the moment, but they compound into something huge: reputation. And reputation is a multiplier. A strong reputation attracts opportunities you can't force into existence. People recommend you without you begging. People trust you with bigger responsibilities. People open doors. People take your calls. People want to work with you. Not because you're flashy, but because you're solid. That's compounding. Now, here's a hard truth. The same compounding that builds wealth also builds disaster, because compounding multiplies whatever you repeat. If you repeat overspending, you get a lifestyle that owns you. If you repeat high interest debt, you get stress that doesn't let you breathe. If you repeat avoidance, you get anxiety that grows. If you repeat negative self-talk, you get a self-image that shrinks. If you repeat toxic relationships, you get a life full of drama and exhaustion. If you repeat, I'll start later, you eventually wake up and realize later arrived. This is why compounding is the most important lens you can develop. It forces you to think in trajectories instead of moments. It forces you to stop asking, how do I feel about this right now? And start asking, where does this go if I keep doing it? That question is a superpower. Here it is. If I repeat this choice for 5 years, where does it take me? If I repeat this spending habit for 5 years, where do I end up? If I repeat this diet for 5 years, where do I end up? If I repeat this daily routine for 5 years, who do I become? If I repeat these friendships for 5 years, what happens to my mindset? If I repeat this work ethic for 5 years, what does my career look like? Most choices become obvious when you attach repetition to them, because repetition is the engine of compounding. Now let's bring this back to money in a practical way, because a lot of people hear compounding and they think it means one thing, invest and wait, but that's incomplete. Compounding is not just waiting. Compounding is making good choices consistently and not undoing them. It's less about being brilliant and more about not being self-destructive. It's less about a perfect plan and more about a plan you can stick to. So what actually makes compounding work in real life? First, you need a gap between what you earn and what you spend. If you spend everything you make, there's nothing left to compound. So the first step is not picking stocks. The first step is creating margin, even if it's small, especially if it's small, because small margin today can compound into big margin later. Second, you need time, and time requires stability. That means you need a basic buffer so you don't constantly pull money out every time life happens, because life will happen. Your car will need repairs. Your home will need something. A medical bill will show up. A family emergency will happen. If you don't have a buffer, you'll keep interrupting the process. Compounding can't work if you're forced to restart every year. Third, you need consistency. A lot of people overestimate what they can do in 1 month and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Consistency is stronger than intensity because intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. Fourth, you need to avoid the big mistakes. People think wealth is about making huge winning moves. In reality, long-term success often comes from avoiding huge losing moves, avoiding decisions that blow up the entire system. Because you can do 9 things right, but one catastrophic mistake can reset your clock. That's why boring wins. Boring is stable. Stable creates time. Time creates compounding. Now let's talk about the psychological side, because this is where most people fail. Compounding requires emotional control. It requires you to stay calm when the world is loud. It requires you to stay consistent when results are quiet. It requires you to not sabotage yourself when you're bored, and boredom is a big one. People don't just quit because things are hard. People quit because things are slow. They get tired of waiting. They want a story to tell. They want excitement. They want a quick win to prove they're smart. But compounding is not impressed by your need for excitement. Compounding rewards boring. That's why so many wealthy people look lucky from the outside, because the work that created the wealth didn't look dramatic. It looked like steady habits repeated for a long time. And that's also why so many people stay broke while working hard, because they're working hard, but they're not building momentum. They're not building systems. They're not building assets. They're constantly consuming their future in the present. And again, this isn't about never enjoying life. This is about understanding trade-offs. When you truly understand compounding, you don't just see the cost of something. You see the opportunity cost. You start asking, what is this purchase stealing from future me? Not in a guilty way, in a clear way, because clarity beats guilt every time. Guilt makes you quit. Clarity makes you choose. Now let's talk about a major misunderstanding. A lot of people think compounding is only for young people. They hear time, and they assume the message is, if you didn't start at 18, it's over. That's not true. Starting earlier is better, but starting now is powerful. The most expensive mistake is not being late. It's staying late, waiting another year and another. Time passes anyway. The next 5 years are coming no matter what. You're going to arrive in the future. The question is whether you arrive with momentum. If you're 40 and you start today, you still have time for meaningful compounding. If you're 50 and you start today, you still have time for meaningful compounding. If you're 60 and you start today, you can still improve your life dramatically. Compounding isn't just a retirement concept. It's a direction concept. It's about changing your trajectory. Now, I want to make this extremely practical, because if this stays motivational, it feels good, and then nothing changes. So here's a simple way to build your own compounding system. Step 1, pick a number. Not a perfect number, a sustainable number. If you can save at 25 a week, start there. If you can save 100 a month, start there. If you can save 10% of your income, start there. The amount is not the identity. The identity is, I'm the type of person who compounds. This is important, because once you become the type of person who compounds, you raise the number over time naturally, not from force, from identity. Step 2, automate it. The goal is to remove daily decision making. Willpower is unreliable. Automation is reliable. Compounding loves reliable. Step 3, build a buffer. If you don't have any emergency savings at all, your first mission is stability. Because without stability, you'll keep interrupting the process. And interruption is the enemy. Step 4, increase your earning power through skill compounding. This is where most people miss a huge opportunity. You can invest all day, but if your income never grows, it's harder than it needs to be. If you learn skills that the market pays for, your income can grow. And then your investing and saving grows. And then your compounding accelerates. This is compounding on top of compounding. Skill compounding feeds money compounding. Step 5, protect the downside. Don't gamble with money you need soon. Don't chase hype because you're bored. Don't put yourself in situations where one bad decision ruins everything. Compounding is powerful, but it's fragile if you keep throwing it into chaos. Now let's talk about one of the biggest reasons people interrupt compounding: fear. Markets go down. Life gets uncertain. The news gets scary. And when people are scared, they want to do something. They want to take action to feel in control. But sometimes the smartest action is not taking action. Sometimes the smartest move is holding steady, because compounding works when you let it work. If you keep pulling your money out, putting it back in, changing strategies, chasing the new thing, your returns don't get a chance to stack. You keep paying the cost of restarting. This isn't just about investing. It's about any habit. If you diet for 2 weeks and then binge for 3 weeks, you're not compounding health. You're compounding frustration. If you study for a month and then disappear for 6 months, you're not compounding skill. You're compounding inconsistency. If you treat people well sometimes and disrespect them other times, you're not compounding trust. You're compounding instability. Compounding requires one thing: consistency longer than your mood. That's the real upgrade. Now let's talk about a very uncomfortable truth. A lot of people want compounding results without compounding behavior. They want the end of the movie without watching the boring middle. They want the overnight success, but they don't want the years of quiet repetition. And because they don't want the repetition, they look for a breakthrough, the perfect idea, the perfect business, the perfect trade, the perfect partner, the perfect plan. But the breakthrough is usually not a lightning bolt, it's momentum. And momentum comes from small wins stacked for a long time. This is why compounding is so powerful. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Not instantly, eventually. Eventually is the word impatient people hate, but eventually is the word builders live by. Now I want to give you a way to spot compounders and anti-compounders in your life. A compounder is anything that makes your future easier. An anti-compounder is anything that makes your future harder. Compounders saving and investing consistently, learning a valuable skill, sleeping enough, moving your body, eating mostly real food, building relationships with stable people, keeping your promises, doing hard things even when you don't feel like it. Anti-compounders, high interest debt, constant impulse spending, always upgrading to impress people, staying up late for no reason, living on junk inputs, junk food, junk media, junk conversations, hanging around people who drag you into drama, quitting every time the excitement fades, avoiding difficult but necessary conversations. Now here's the key. Most compounders are boring in the moment. Most anti-compounders feel good in the moment. That's why compounding is a maturity test. Can you choose what pays later over what feels good now? That's the whole game. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to win most days. You need to make compounding your default. Because if compounding is your default, your life will drift upward. And that is a very different experience than drifting downward. Now let's talk about what happens when compounding finally becomes visible. Because this is the part that changes people's beliefs. In the early years, your contributions matter more than your growth. You're adding money and the growth is small. Then your growth starts matching what you add. Then your growth becomes bigger than what you add. At that point, it starts feeling like something is working without you. And that's when people finally believe. But you can't wait to believe. Because belief is usually the reward, not the requirement. You build first. Then you believe. That's why the beginning is the hardest. You're doing the work without the confidence. You're putting money away without the proof. You're learning without feeling smart. You're training without looking different. You're being consistent without applause. That's the price. And it's also the advantage. Because most people won't pay that price. They'd rather pay the price of regret later. Now let's bring this home with a simple idea you can carry with you. Your life is the sum of your compounded choices, not your big moments, not your lucky breaks, not the one year you were really motivated, your repeated choices, the little choices, the ordinary days. That's what compounds into your future. So if you want a different future, you don't need a different personality overnight. You need different patterns. And patterns are built by small decisions repeated. You don't need to change everything today. You need to start something today that future you will be grateful you didn't quit. That's the real secret. Start. Stay consistent. Don't interrupt. Let time multiply your effort. Now, I want to speak directly to the person who feels behind. The person who feels like they made too many mistakes. The person who feels like they wasted years. You cannot change the past, but you can stop compounding in the wrong direction. And that alone is a huge win. Sometimes the first step isn't even positive compounding. Sometimes the first step is stopping the bleeding, cutting the high-interest debt, reducing the lifestyle that's crushing you, leaving the toxic environment, fixing the sleep schedule, breaking the habit that keeps resetting your clock. Because once you stop negative compounding, positive compounding has room to work. And that's a massive turning point. Now, to be clear, compounding isn't a guarantee of becoming a billionaire. That's not realistic for everyone, and it's not the point. The point is becoming secure, becoming free, becoming calm, becoming the person who doesn't panic when life happens, becoming the person who can choose. Because wealth at its core is not about flexing. It's about control over your time. And compounding is the most reliable tool for building that control. So here's the takeaway. Stop looking for the trick. Stop chasing the thing that promises fast results. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. The perfect moment is a myth. The real moment is now. Pick a small habit that compounds. Automate it, protect it, repeat it, give it time. And remember, this compounding is not magic, it's math. It's momentum, it's repetition, it's time. And it's available to anyone who's willing to do what most people won't do. Keep going when it's still boring. Keep going when nobody notices. Keep going when it feels small. Because one day it won't feel small. One day you'll look at your progress and realize the momentum is real. Your money is working. Your skills are paying you back. Your health is supporting you. Your relationships are stronger. Your confidence is higher. Your life is easier. Not because you found a secret, but because you finally respected the quiet power that builds everything worth having, compounding. Start today and let time do what time does best.